We begin chapter 23, chapter 23. In one word, miyuchadim, bound up, united. What do we learn in the previous chapter is that through God's speech, he reveals himself. Through his speech, there's something separate, not from his perspective. His perspective, we're united in one and completely not separate and distinct from him at all. But from our perspective, as speech, the word comes out, so we feel a separateness, independence. And that comes through the concealment on the divine light that is in the Word of God. It becomes so concealed that, as we explain the different aspects of what it means, klipa and siter acher, and other gods, that it has a sense of God is either distant or God is not within me. And I am, hence, an independent being. What's the whole purpose of that? Why would God create such a world? Because he wants us to now be miyuchadim, to be bound up with him. In other words, angels, it's very clear. Souls in Gan Eden, there's great clarity. But here we have a hester, we have a concealment on the divine light. That gives us, first of all, freedom of choice. And that choice that we can make is to be bound up with God. So now the Alter Rebbe is going to explain this concept, what it means to be bound up with God. So the Zohar says that Deraisa v'kutshabrecha kule chad. That's Aramaic. Deraisa is Torah, and the Holy One, blessed be He, God, are completely one, are one. What does that mean? And furthermore, there are 248 positive commandments. The Zohar explains they are 248 limbs of the king, figuratively speaking. What does that mean? Limbs of... Well, let's understand from us. In the human condition, the human being, I have an eye that sees and I have an ear that hears. What does that mean? The soul vests itself in the limb, in the different limbs of the body, and each limb then becomes a repository for the particular faculty of the soul that vests itself in that organ. Hence, the eye that sees and the ear that hears, the arm that extends itself, and so on. Likewise, every single commandment of the 248 positive commandments are a channel or a repository for the divine will. Each one expresses the divine will. That's the metaphor. So with this, then we can understand that the divine will is the inner, constitutes the innermost will of God and the true desire that he has. So the inner will is what causes an outer will. So what's the inner will? The mitzvah. What's the outer will? Creation, the world, the physical world, right? This table, chair that I'm sitting on, physical land, all of that is an outer will because it's only a means to an end. Is that what God really wants? He wants a table. He wants the earth. No, he wants the mitzvah. That's what he wants. It's his inner will, that a mitzvah should be fulfilled. So with this, then we can understand that what sustains the world is not God's, is God's inner will, his desire for the mitzvah, because the mitzvah is the limb of the king, as it were. The 248 limbs. So therefore, just from that statement, we don't have to go any further how important it is to fulfill a mitzvah, because it is what causes God to give life in this world, to give existence to this world. So it is only the performance of the mitzvah that animates everything. Now, let's understand when we use this metaphor of limb of the king, let's understand this more clearly, what it means, the unity that there is in the mitzvah. Well, when I have a desire to move my hand, it's my soul's desire, and as long as I'm healthy, the soul's desire, the limb of my hand, is completely nullified to my soul's desire, right? There's no talk back. It just stretches out because that's what I want. Meaning it's completely nullified. You don't have to consciously think and it has to accept. No, it's completely surrendered to the life force of the soul that wants to extend the arm, right? So likewise, the mitzvah, it is totally nullified to the will of God. Totally nullified to the will of God. It's an expression of the will of God, and therefore totally nullified to the will of God. Therefore, when we do a mitzvah, the power to do that mitzvah is completely surrendered and nullified to the divine will. It is sort of like the body and the soul. Just as the body is nullified to the soul's will, that I want to extend my hand, right? Likewise, the act of me doing the mitzvah, the act of giving charity, the act of me walking to go to synagogue, the act of me putting on my tefillin, or the act of my mouth speaking words of Torah right now. That very act of the soul, not the very act, not the limb itself, the power of action that's in the soul becomes united with the divine will as figuratively like the soul and body are united. The physical limb is not united like body and soul, which are seamlessly one, but they're united as a chariot. What does that mean? A chariot, Parshas V'Shalach, we're learning about the Pharaoh and going after the Jews in chariots, right? So a chariot is nullified to its rider, has a will of its own. It's nullified to the rider. Wherever the rider wants to go, that's where the chariot goes, right, left, whatever. Excuse me. So that shows on a surrender or a nullification. So the physical body that's engaged in doing the act of the mitzvah, putting on tefillin, the extending your arm to give charity and the like, your legs going to do a mitzvah, the physical limbs of your body are completely surrendered, like a chariot is surrendered to its rider, meaning it's completely surrendered to the divine will and incorporated and bound up with the divine will. And that's why the sages say that the patriarchs were a chariot to God, meaning their very physical limbs were completely subservient to the divine will, like a chariot is to its rider. Now, we're making a distinction over here. That's the physicality of the person in the act of doing the mitzvah. But then there's the power of the soul to do an action that's unified with the divine will as soul and body are seamlessly one. So it's even a deeper connection. Little distinction there that I hope that you get. In other words, there's the physical body. When you're doing a physical act, the physical body of giving charity is bound up, united with the divine will of God. And then there's the power of my soul that it can do an action. It's also bound up, and even more of a unity, as body and soul are seamlessly one. Chariot and rider are not seamlessly one. They're two separate things. But the chariot is vehicle. It's like a vehicle when you're driving a car, wherever direction, the car has no will of its own. The way you lead it, that's the way it goes. It's surrendered, as it were, but there is a car and there is a driver, from modern day terms, right? But then there's body and soul. The body's also completely surrendered. Look, I moved my arm. What? Body wanted to do it? No. My soul desired to. It's completely nullified, seamlessly one. It's even a greater unity. So the power of the soul's capability of doing an action is seamlessly bound up with the divine will, as body and soul are seamlessly bound up. The physical limb that does the mitzvah is also bound up with God, but as a chariot, as a car is surrendered to its driver, has no will of its own. Hope you got that. What is it? First of all, what is it? It's a powerful idea here. First of all, when you're doing a mitzvah, you're bound up with God, and that's the inner will of God. And that actually animates the world. For this reason, when you put on tefillin with a Jew, you yourself put on tefillin or pray or learn Torah, you're protecting a Jew in Israel. You're protecting a Jew in Israel. That's a real powerful idea. A soldier that's on the front line. Why? Because it's the mitzvah that it gives rise for God to bring life to the world, existence to the world, because existence is only a means to an end. It's the outer will of God. It's klipa. But the mitzvah is the inner will of God. So that's what propels an outer will. Well, let me give it by way of metaphor. You go to work. You want to go to work? Well, I actually say, when you see someone chasing the bus, ask them, and they miss the bus, tell them, well, that's a nice hobby you have. You're really into running after buses. Person will look at you a little crazy. I'm not into running after buses. I want to get on the bus. Oh, that's what you're into, getting on the buses. I says, no, frankly, no. I just want to get to work. Oh, that's what you're into, getting to work. I says, no, I want to get to work so I can work. Oh, okay, now I get it. You're not into chasing buses. You're not getting onto buses or getting to work. You're into work. Well, frankly, not so much. Not such exciting work. I'm into getting a paycheck at the end of the week, so I do all those things. That's what you're into, getting a paycheck. Well, frankly, not. The only reason I want the paycheck is because I have a family and I want to take care of them. And I love them, and that's what I'm into, my family. Oh, so your inner will is taking care of your family. That leads to an outer will, that you work, that you get to work, that you get on the bus, and you even run after a bus to get onto it. Those are outer will, a means to an end that serves the inner will. The inner will of God is the mitzvah. And that propels, and that gives divine life, that we become united and one with Him in the two levels we just mentioned, the physical act of a mitzvah. And that propels to give vitality to all of existence. So folks, that's very empowering. Our mitzvah matters. It brings not only that we're bound up with God, but it brings us to bring life to this world. But that's the secondary thing, actually. The primary thing is we're connected with God. Yes, so doing a mitzvah doesn't bring merely blessing, Mary Ellen. It brings life. Life is blessing, of course, but the word blessing might not be very clear in what we actually are accomplishing. Powerful, something to live with. Linda from New York, good morning. Julio, shalom. Dave is with us from Scotland, shalom. Annie, good morning. Carla. Why read Tanya all the time? Well, look what we just read, so. Ashley, good morning. Hello. Good evening, wherever you're from, that it's good evening. Oh, thank you, Denise. Yes. Lilia. Morning. Miss you. Marjorie from Dania Beach. Good morning. David from Armenian. Welcome back. Good morning. Yes, addiction is the equivalent of losing control of the chariot. Actually, not just losing control of the chariot's running you. You know, mitzvah can heal the Well, I don't know if it can heal the addiction. It definitely, mitzvah is there to help, and it might be other deeper things inside, emotionally, psychologically, that need to be dealt with. But definitely, it's an integral part of the process, and not just doing the mitzvah, of course, doing the mitzvah, but also the learning what we're doing over here, that really empowers us in the act of the mitzvah. Thank you, Sigalit. Marilyn from Toronto, thank you for joining. Batya, welcome to Montreal from Austin, Texas. Thank you. Annie, all right. Ashley, you're not stuck in traffic. You are where you're supposed to be. God wouldn't put you where you're not meant to be. So don't have the mindset of being stuck. Have the mindset of, wow, look at that opportunity. I could learn. Alice from Baltimore, thank you for joining. Thank you, Clem. All right, thank you, everybody, for your Darren, thank you. All right, on Instagram, Sharon from St. Vincent, from Israel, Galit, thank you. All right, folks, sharing is caring. Please share. Today is Yud Aleph Shvat, the 11th day of the month of Shvat, 11/11/11, in the year 5711, in the 11th month, which is Shvat, on the 11th day. That's when the Rebbe officially took the leadership of Chabad, world Jewry for that matter, the world. Responsibility for taking responsibility for the world. And how did he do that? What we learned over here: do a mitzvah, share it with another. When you do that, you're giving a connection to the inner will of God that brings not just a connection to God, well, not just, that itself is enough, and the purpose is the connection itself, but it brings untold blessing. It brings life, existence to everything as a result. So there's a lot to share here. Please do. Just a reminder, I'm doing this for 1 minute. It'll be hard to do this for a minute. Thinking, how am I going to break this down into 1 minute? Bite-sized idea that you can get on Tanya Rabbi. But God willing, I'll do that. So you can get that on LinkedIn, you can get it on Twitter, and you can get it on Instagram, Tanya Rabbi. Thank you for joining. Have a wonderful day.